Ethan's ship had barely touched down on the alien planet when alarms blared across the cabin. Sparks flew from the damaged control panel, and smoke curled toward the ceiling. He cursed under his breath, fumbling with switches and trying to stabilize the failing engines. The landing had been rough, but he had survived barely. He opened the door of the cockpit and stepped outside, blinking in the harsh light of the planet's twin suns. The air was thin, and the ground beneath him was rocky and uneven. Strange plants, glowing faintly, waved in a wind that carried a metallic Thames. He knew he had little time. He needed to find shelter, assess the damage to his ship, and most importantly, figure out if anyone was nearby. Humanity had sent him on this mission to explore unknown planets, but this world felt different. It wasn't empty. Something alive was moving in the distance. Ethan's instincts kicked in. He crouched behind a rock, peering over the edge. The figures ahead were humanoid but taller than him, their movements precise and coordinated. They wore armor that shimmered like liquid metal. He couldn't understand their language, but their gestures were aggressive. He realized with a jolt that this was a battle. Innocent lives were at risk. Through the chaos, a small figure ran ahead of the fighting. A child, a girl, her bright hair catching the light, seemed terrified, stumbling over the rocks. She was trying to escape, but the armored attackers were closing in. Ethan's heart raced. Without thinking, he ran toward her. "Get down!" he shouted, diving in front of the girl as one of the attackers swung a weapon in her direction. Pain shot through his shoulder as the blow grazed him, but he didn't move. He shielded her with his body, pushing her to the ground. She looked up at him, wide-eyed and trembling. "Go," he urged. "Run to the trees." She hesitated, fear and confusion on her face, but then she nodded and sprinted toward a nearby grove of glowing plants. Ethan kept his body between her and the attackers, using every ounce of strength to hold them off. His training on Earth had prepared him for many things, but nothing like this. The attackers were skilled, moving with a discipline he had never seen. Suddenly, a loud, commanding voice echoed across the battlefield. The attackers froze, and Ethan looked up. A figure stood on a rise above the chaos. Her armor was ornate, decorated with symbols that glowed faintly. She was tall, her presence commanding and powerful. Ethan realized she was in charge. The attackers hesitated, then slowly withdrew. The Queen, he realized. She was watching him, her eyes sharp and calculating. There was no immediate threat now, but he knew he had drawn her attention, and that could be dangerous. He helped the girl to her feet, keeping her close as they moved toward a safer spot. She clung to him, her small hands gripping his jacket. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "Someone who wants to make sure you're safe," he replied, keeping his tone calm. "Can you walk?" She nodded, and together they moved toward the trees, where the light dimmed and shadows offered some cover. Ethan's mind raced. He needed to explain, to show he wasn't a threat, but he also knew the Queen's eyes were still on him. He had acted without thinking, and now he would face the consequences. They reached the edge of the forest, and the girl paused. "Mom, will she be okay?" she asked, referring to the armored woman who had stopped the attackers. "She will," Ethan said, "but we need to be careful. Can you run the rest of the way?" The girl nodded again and dashed forward. Ethan followed for a few steps, then stopped. He felt the weight of his decision. He had saved her, but now he had no idea what the Queen would do. Moments later, palace guards arrived, surrounding him. They didn't attack, but their weapons were raised and their expressions were unreadable. Ethan raised his hand slightly. "I'm not a threat," he said. "I saved your child." The guards spoke among themselves, and one finally nodded. They escorted him through a series of glowing corridors to a grand hall. The walls shimmered with alien energy, and the floor seemed to hum beneath his feet. He had never seen anything like it. At the far end of the hall stood the Queen. She regarded him silently, her gaze piercing. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He had faced enemies on distant planets before, but the weight of her attention was different. It wasn't just power. It was authority, intelligence, and a presence that demanded respect. "You are human," she said finally, her voice calm but firm. Yes, Ethan replied. My name is Ethan. I didn't mean to interfere. I just saw a child in danger. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly. Most humans would not risk themselves for an alien child. Why? Ethan hesitated. There was no easy answer. Because I couldn't just watch her get hurt, he said honestly. No one deserves that. The Queen studied him for a long moment. Then she spoke again, her tone softer, almost curious. Your species is unpredictable. I do not yet know if that is strength or foolishness. Ethan nodded, trying not to show how tense he felt. I'm willing to answer any questions, he said. I can help if you let me. She gestured, and one of her advisors stepped forward. Taking Ethan's information and scanning his ship data, he explained his mission, his arrival, and how he had become involved. The Queen listened quietly, her expression unreadable. After a while, she stood and approached him. Her armor reflected the soft lights of the hall, and her presence made him feel both small and significant. You saved my daughter, she said. For that, you have my attention. But attention is not reward, human. You will remain here until I decide your fate. Ethan felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. He had survived the battle, protected the child, and yet now he was under the scrutiny of one of the most powerful beings he had ever met. The girl. Lyra appeared at the edge of the hall, clutching her mother's hand. Her eyes were wide with curiosity and awe as she saw Ethan. She took a small step toward him, then paused. Thank you, she whispered. Ethan managed a small smile. You're welcome, he said. I'm glad you're safe. The Queen watched the exchange silently, her eyes shifting between Ethan and Lyra. She spoke again, this time with a hint of something Ethan could not quite name: respect, perhaps, or interest. You are unlike any human I have encountered, she said. Your courage and your choice to protect another, that may serve a purpose here. We will see. Ethan knew that he was now part of something much larger than himself. His actions had caught the attention of a ruler, and the fate of this planetan of Lyra might soon depend on him. As night fell over the alien landscape, Ethan sat quietly in a chamber provided by the Queen. Outside, he could hear the faint hum of energy from the palace walls and the distant cry of strange creatures in the darkness. He thought about Earth, his home, and wondered how long it would be before he could return, but deep down he knew that he could not turn away. Something about this world, the people, and the child he had protected pulled at him. Humanity had always been brave in unexpected ways, and here, on a distant alien planet, his bravery might mean more than he had ever imagined. Ethan closed his eyes, letting the events of the day settle in his mind. He had acted without hesitation, shielded a life with his own body, and now he was under the watchful gaze of a queen who could decide everything about his future. He did not know what awaited him, but he understood one thing clearly. He would not regret protecting the girl, no matter the cost. And so, the first night on the alien planet passed, filled with uncertainty, anticipation, and the quiet resolve of a human who had already shown what his species was capable of: fearless, selfless, and ready to face the unknown. Ethan awoke to soft, warm light filtering through the tall windows of the chamber the Queen had provided him. The room was simple, yet elegant, with smooth walls that seemed to glow faintly in response to the sunlight. He stretched carefully, still feeling the ache from the blow he had taken while protecting Lyra. The memory of the girl's terrified eyes flashed in his mind, and he clenched his jaw. He had done the right thing. That much he knew. Before he could gather his thoughts fully, a gentle knock sounded at the door. Ethan opened it to see one of the Queen's advisors standing there, holding a small device that seemed to record data and monitor his health. You are awake, the advisor said. The Queen requests your presence in the council chamber. She wishes to speak with you directly. Ethan nodded, bracing himself. He had already seen the Queen once, but this time he sensed it would be more personal. He followed the advisor through long corridors filled with quiet hums of energy, past guards who gave him cautious but respectful nods. The palace was unlike anything he had imagined. Technology and elegance merged seamlessly, making the halls appear alive with purpose and order. When they reached the council chamber, the queen was seated at the center of a semicircular table, surrounded by her most trusted advisors. Her armor reflected the ambient light, giving her an almost ethereal appearance. Ethan stepped forward, keeping his posture straight, even though his heart raced. "You survived," the queen said simply, her gaze steady on him. "That alone sets you apart from other humans we have encountered." Few would act without hesitation, without regard for their own safety, to protect a child. Ethan swallowed. "I did what anyone should do. No one should hurt a child." The queen tilted her head slightly, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "Perhaps. Yet humans are known for their unpredictability. Some act in courage, others in folly. I am unsure which you represent, Ethan. That is why I will test you further. Your actions alone do not guarantee trust." Ethan's eyes sharpened. A test, he realized. He had faced physical dangers before, but this was different. This was a test of judgment, character, and perhaps even diplomacy. "I understand. I am ready," he said. One of the advisors stepped forward and spoke in a careful tone. "The neighboring factions are restless. They see weakness where there is none. Your species, humans, have a reputation for unusual strategy and determination. The Queen wishes to see if your abilities can be of use to us in the coming conflicts." Ethan nodded slowly, his mind working. He had trained in combat, survival, and problem-solving, but alien strategies were a new challenge. Still, he had learned quickly. "I will do my best. I am willing to learn whatever is necessary." Valeria's eyes softened, though her presence remained formidable. "Good. Then we will begin." She gestured, and holographic displays lit the room, showing maps of the surrounding territories, enemy movements, and areas of interest. "This is where your skills may help. You will train with our guards, learn their techniques, and provide guidance where humans may offer unique insight." Ethan leaned closer, studying the displays. Alien technology was advanced, but there were patterns he recognized: lines of attack, supply routes, weak points. Even without understanding the language completely, he could identify opportunities where human tactics might succeed. The following days were exhausting. Ethan trained alongside the Queen's elite guards, learning their movements, weapon handling, and strategy. He fell multiple times, bruised and scratched, but he rose each time. He adapted human combat techniques to their alien methods, sometimes combining them in ways the guards had never considered. The Queen observed silently, her interest evident in the occasional tilt of her head or a subtle shift in her posture. Meanwhile, Ethan spent time with Lyra whenever possible. The girl was shy at first, but she warmed to him quickly, fascinated by his strength, kindness, and ability to think quickly in dangerous situations. She followed him on short walks around the palace grounds, asking questions about Earth and his life there. Ethan answered carefully, sharing just enough to entertain and teach, but always keeping focus on her safety. One evening, as the twin suns set and painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, Ethan sat with Lyra near a small fountain. She leaned against him, her eyes wide and thoughtful. "Do you always protect people like that?" she asked softly. Ethan smiled faintly. "I tried. Sometimes it's not easy, but it's important. People rely on each other, especially when the world is dangerous." Lyra nodded slowly. "You're brave. Like the stories my mother tells." Ethan felt a tug in his chest. Her words were innocent, yet heavy with meaning. Protecting her had become more than a simple act. It had become a responsibility he could not ignore as they spoke. Alarms sounded across the palace. Ethan's senses snapped into alert. "Stay here," he said, and the girl hurried inside. He raced toward the source of the commotion, arriving at the command center to find guards moving frantically. Reports came in quickly. A rival faction was testing the palace defenses, sending scouts to probe the perimeter. The Queen entered moments later, her expression calm but determined. "They think us weak," she said, her voice carrying authority. "We must show them otherwise." "Ethan, You will observe, advise, and act where necessary. Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle over him. The coming hours would test everything he had learned. He worked alongside the guards, analyzing movements, suggesting defensive adjustments, and preparing for a potential attack. His human intuition, combined with his newfound knowledge of alien tactics, allowed the palace to anticipate the enemy's moves. Night fell fully, and the first attackers approached. Ethan moved quickly, coordinating with the guards to redirect forces, set traps, and fortify vulnerable points. His actions were precise and deliberate, protecting not only the palace, but the people inside. He remembered Lyra, remembering the moment he had shielded her. The memory gave him focus and determination. When the skirmish ended, the attackers had withdrawn, unable to breach the palace defenses. Ethan surveyed the damage minor, mostly structural, but the palace and its inhabitants remained safe. Guards gave him nods of respect, some even clapping him on the shoulder. For a moment, he allowed himself to breathe. The Queen entered the command center, her presence commanding immediate attention. She observed Ethan carefully. "You have done well," she said. Few humans would have adapted so quickly. Few would have cared so deeply for one child, enough to risk themselves repeatedly. Ethan felt a mixture of pride and humility. "I did what I had to do. That's all." Valeria's gaze softened slightly, and she walked closer. "Your actions have not gone unnoticed. You are more than a guest here, Ethan. Your presence affects the balance of this world. You must understand that soon. Your choices will matter not only for the Queen's court, but for this planet itself." Ethan nodded slowly. The weight of her words pressed down on him. He was no longer a visitor. He had become part of something larger, something that demanded courage, wisdom, and resilience. That night, as he returned to his chamber, Ethan felt the first true connection to this alien world. He had survived battles, protected a child, earned the Queen's attention, but he knew the path ahead would be even more challenging. The coming days would test his strength, his mind, and his heart. Yet despite the uncertainty, he felt a quiet determination growing within him. Humanity had always faced impossible odds, and here, on a distant planet, his actions had already begun to make a difference. Ethan understood that courage was not about fearlessness. It was about facing danger for the sake of others. And so, as he lay down to rest, listening to the hum of the palace and the faint whispers of the night wind, he promised himself that he would continue to protect Lyra, serve the Queen, and show that humans, even alone on an alien world, could rise to meet any challenge. The days ahead would not be easy. Rival factions, political intrigue, and tests of loyalty awaited. But Ethan felt ready. He had shielded one life with his own body, and he would do it again if needed. This was not just survival, it was purpose. And humanity had a way of rising when purpose demanded it, as the twin moons rose over the palace. Casting silver light over the towers and gardens, Ethan closed his eyes. Sleep would come, but so would tomorrow, bringing new tests, new dangers, and new opportunities to prove the strength of a human heart. The first light of the twin suns barely touched the horizon when Ethan was already awake, pacing quietly in his chamber. The events of the previous days played over in his mind, the attack on the palace, the trust he had begun to earn from Queen Valeria, and most importantly, Lyra. He had protected her once, but he knew that the dangers surrounding them were far from over. Each day brought new challenges, and he needed to be ready. As he walked the corridors toward the training hall, he noticed guards moving with unusual urgency. Weapons were checked, and communications buzzed in the alien language he was still learning. Ethan's pulse quickened. Something was happening, something big. He followed a patrol to the command center, where Valeria was already reviewing reports. "They are coming," she said plainly, her eyes never leaving the holographic display that showed enemy movements. "Our enemies have gathered a force we cannot ignore. They wish to breach the palace tonight. They believe we are vulnerable." Ethan studied the display. Hundreds of soldiers, heavily armed, advanced toward the palace gates. The attackers' formation was tight, disciplined, and unrelenting. "It would not be an easy fight. They are testing our defenses," Ethan said, pointing to weak points in the enemy formation. If they push here, they could breach the walls near the northern tower. We need to reinforce it immediately and consider traps or obstacles to slow them down. Valeria nodded approvingly. Good, you understand strategy? Use that knowledge. Help our commanders organize the defense. Human insight may be what saves us tonight. Ethan moved quickly, coordinating with the guards. He suggested using energy barriers to block paths, redirecting enemy units into narrow corridors, and placing defensive squads at critical points. His suggestions were unusual, combining human intuition with alien technology. But the Queen's advisors began to see their merit as the sun dipped behind the horizon. The first scouts appeared, moving silently across the open grounds. Ethan positioned himself near the northern tower where he could both observe and act. The palace gates were reinforced, and traps had been set according to his instructions. The air was tense. Filled with the hum of energy fields and the quiet chatter of guards preparing for battle, the enemy advanced quickly, breaking through the outer perimeter. Ethan moved with precision, coordinating movements and guiding squads where needed. His human instincts allowed him to predict enemy tactics before they unfolded. When attackers approached the tower, Ethan used the palace's advanced energy barriers to funnel them into a narrow passage. They were forced to slow, giving the guards an advantage. Still, the fight was fierce. Ethan's heart pounded as he saw a squad of attackers attempting to flank the tower. Without hesitation, he ran forward, intercepting the group with a combination of alien martial techniques and human combat maneuvers. He was faster, more adaptable, and instinctive. The attackers underestimated his abilities, since several fell before reaching the guards. Amid the chaos, Ethan caught sight of Lyra, standing at the top of a balcony, her eyes wide with fear. She had sneaked out to see the battle, unaware of the danger. Without thinking, Ethan darted toward her, his body moving faster than he realized. A falling piece of debris threatened to strike her, and he leaped, throwing himself in front of her. Pain shot through his shoulder again, but he shielded her. Pushing her safely behind the balcony railing, Lyra clutched him, trembling. "Ethan, why do you keep putting yourself in danger?" "I protect you because it matters," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "I promised. And promises are important." The Queen appeared shortly after, surveying the battlefield from another balcony. Her gaze swept across the courtyard, landing on Ethan multiple times. Each time he could feel her calculating, analyzing his decisions and actions. She saw what he had done for Lyra and how his presence had inspired the guards. Hours passed, the battle ebbing and flowing across the palace grounds. Ethan moved continuously, blocking enemy advances, redirecting troops, and setting traps. He became a force the attackers could not anticipate. His human adaptability, combined with the knowledge he had gained in the palace, allowed him to create strategies in the moment. Adjusting to the shifting battlefield at one point, a group of attackers tried to breach the palace's energy shield from a rear entrance. Ethan noticed them, signaling to the nearby squad. He led a counterattack, surprising the attackers and driving them back. Each successful defense built morale among the guards. They began to rely on his instincts, and even the Queen's advisors started to nod at his decisions. Though quietly, Lyra remained close to the safety of her mother, but her eyes often darted to Ethan. She saw how he moved, how he thought, and how he risked himself to ensure the safety of others. To her, he was more than a protector. He was a hero. As night deepened, the attackers launched their final push. The palace gates shook under their assault, and energy shields flickered under repeated strikes. Ethan ran from point to point, coordinating defenses, rallying the guards, and even engaging in direct combat. His body ached, his muscles burned, but he did not stop. He could not. The lives of countless people, and especially Lyra, depended on him in a decisive moment. Ethan noticed the enemy commander attempting a direct attack on the northern tower where Lyra had hidden. Without hesitation, he charged, engaging the commander in close combat. The alien fought with strength and skill, but Ethan's unpredictability gave him the edge. Using a combination of agility and strategy, he disarmed the attacker and forced him to retreat. The remaining attackers. seeing their leader fall and their formations collapsing, began to withdraw. The palace defenses held, thanks largely to Ethan's insight and courage. Exhausted but alert, he watched the enemy retreat across the plains. Disappearing into the darkness, the aftermath was quiet, almost surreal. Guards and advisors moved among the wounded and damaged structures, ensuring safety and repairing critical systems. Ethan leaned against a wall, breathing heavily. His body sore, but his spirit intact. Valeria approached him, her expression unreadable, but her steps purposeful. She stopped before him, her eyes locking with his. "You have done what few could even imagine," she said. "You protected the palace, the people, and my daughter. That is courage beyond measure." Ethan bowed slightly, humbled. "I did what I had to do. That's all." The queen's gaze softened, though it remained strong and commanding. "Humans are strange," she said quietly. "Your species can act with a combination of instinct, logic, and selflessness that few others can match. It is remarkable." Lyra appeared then, running to Ethan and throwing her arms around his waist. "You saved me again." "Thank you, Ethan." Ethan knelt, hugging her back gently. "I promise, Lyra. I will always protect you." Valeria watched silently, her mind processing everything she had witnessed. Ethan's actions had not only defended her child, but it also inspired her people. He had shown that humans, even alone on an alien planet, possessed a bravery and determination that could turn the tide in impossible situations. As the night settled over the palace, Ethan sat quietly with Lyra, both of them exhausted but safe. The battle was over, but he knew this was only the beginning. The rival factions would not give up so easily, and his presence had already altered the dynamics of the planet's politics. Yet, for the first time, he felt a sense of belonging. He had acted without hesitation to protect a life that was not his own, and in doing so, he had earned respect, trust, and perhaps even admiration. Humanity had always risen to challenges, and here, far from Earth, he had proven it again. As he looked at the stars above, twinkling faintly through the palace windows, Ethan understood something important. Courage was not just about fighting or surviving. It was about standing up for others, even when the odds were impossible. He had done that, and he would continue to do so, whatever came next. The palace was quiet now, the hum of energy fields and the soft murmur of guards filling the silence. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, letting his body rest while his mind remained alert. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, political intrigue, new enemies, and perhaps tests of loyalty he could not yet imagine. But for tonight, he had one. He had protected Lyra, defended the palace, and shown that a single human could make a difference in a world filled with powerful beings and unpredictable dangers. And as he lay back on the soft floor of his chamber, Ethan allowed himself a small smile. Humanity's courage, ingenuity, and selflessness were not bound by planets or species. On this alien world, he had proven that human strength could shine even in the darkest hours. The morning sun of Lyra Prime filtered through the tall windows of the palace, casting long silver shadows across the marble floors. Ethan stood at the balcony of his quarters, looking out at the sprawling city below. The towers shimmered with light, and the streets buzzed with activity. Though the city was beautiful, Ethan knew appearances could be deceiving. Beneath its grandeur, challenges waited, challenges that would test patience, intelligence, and courage. Today was no ordinary day. A council session had been scheduled to discuss expanding trade routes into uncharted regions of the planet. The decision carried enormous consequences: prosperity for some regions, potential conflict for others. Ethan knew that diplomacy alone would not be enough. He would need to demonstrate practical understanding, quick thinking, and cooperation with the Lyra engineers and officials as he made his way to the council chambers. He noticed Princess Lyra standing by the entrance, her violet eyes fixed on him. She looked calm, but there was a sharp edge to her gaze. She had been observing him carefully over the past week, noting the way he navigated unfamiliar customs, solved complex problems, and remained composed under pressure. It was a combination of curiosity, respect, and something she didn't fully understand yet. "You are punctual, human," she said, her tone measured but not hostile. "I hope you are prepared for today's discussions. Mistakes could have consequences beyond what you imagine." Ethan inclined his head politely. "I am prepared, Princess Liara. I understand the importance of today's decisions." She studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. "We will see if your preparation matches your words." The council chamber was alive with discussion when Ethan arrived. Members from different regions of Lyra Prime had gathered, their robes and insignias marking status, expertise, and power. Maps and holographic projections hovered over the central table, showing the proposed trade routes and the potential hazards associated with them. Ethan took his place at the table, careful to maintain respectful posture. He listened as the council debated, noting both the strengths and weaknesses of their arguments. Some members advocated for rapid expansion, seeking immediate profit and influence. Others warned against the unknown dangers, citing previous failures in similar ventures. Princess Liara spoke at length, her voice commanding the room. "We cannot risk the safety of our citizens for short-term gain. Strategy and foresight must guide our actions." "Human representative, what is your view?" Ethan's heart remained steady. He had prepared for this, but he also knew that adaptability would be just as important as preparation. "The proposed trade routes offer opportunity, but also risk," he said calmly. "My suggestion is to begin with smaller exploratory missions. Combine human adaptability with Lyra technology. By observing conditions firsthand, we can reduce risk while gathering valuable data." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some council members nodded, seeing the logic in his words. Others frowned, unconvinced that a human could understand the nuances of Lyra logistics. Ethan continued, "We should equip the explorers with tools to analyze terrain, weather, and potential hazards. This approach allows controlled expansion rather than reckless growth. It prioritizes safety while achieving objectives." Liara's gaze softened slightly. She had expected an argument or a defensive stance. Instead, Ethan offered clear reasoning and a plan that combined caution with action. She made a note of it, realizing that his approach reflected a rare balance of intellect and foresight. As the debate continued, an alarm suddenly sounded. The chamber lights flickered, and the holographic projections shimmered and distorted. Council members froze in confusion. Ethan immediately scanned the situation. The energy grid for the chamber was being affected, but it wasn't a simple malfunction. The system was under unusual stress, showing signs of a broader problem in the city's power distribution. Lyra's violet eyes widened. "This is not normal," she said sharply. "Human, can you assess the situation?" Ethan moved toward the control panel. "I will need access to the city grid's monitoring systems," he said calmly. "We need to identify the source of the problem before it escalates." The council quickly granted permission, and Ethan began analyzing the data. He noticed a spike in energy draw from one of the distribution nodes. It appeared that a recently installed substation had malfunctioned, causing a cascading effect on nearby circuits. "Here," he said, pointing at the readouts. "This node is unstable. If we do not stabilize it, the blackout will spread to several districts. We need to reroute energy, isolate the node, and adjust output in real time." Liara and the engineers moved quickly to follow his instructions. Ethan coordinated actions with calm authority, his voice steady despite the urgency. He explained each step, anticipating potential failures and providing solutions before problems arose. For over an hour, the council chamber became a hub of controlled chaos. Holographic maps displayed shifting energy flows. Alarms sounded intermittently, and technicians rushed to stabilize circuits. Yet Ethan remained composed, guiding each action with precision. Finally, the systems began to stabilize. The blackout was contained, and power was restored to affected districts. Council members exhaled in relief. Citizens outside the palace had noticed the blackout and were grateful. For the quick resolution, Liara stepped closer to Ethan, her expression unreadable but thoughtful. "You handle crises with efficiency," she said softly. I have never seen a human act so decisively without panic or aggression. Ethan shook his head slightly. Panic rarely solves problems. Observation, planning, and decisive action do. The princess remained silent for a moment, studying him. Her pride as a royal had always demanded respect, obedience, and recognition. Yet here was a human, young and unfamiliar with her world, commanding results through intellect and calm. She could not ignore it. In the following days, Ethan's reputation grew. Engineers, council members, and even citizens who observed his actions began to view humans differently. His calm, under pressure, willingness to listen, and capacity for problem-solving challenged the assumptions that Lyra society had long held. Lyra found herself observing him constantly, not with the amusement or disdain of their first meeting, but with a mixture of curiosity and reluctant admiration. She had insulted him initially, expecting a reaction of humiliation or anger. Instead, she had seen a human demonstrate qualities she had underestimated: patience, intelligence, adaptability, and courage. One afternoon, she approached Ethan in a quieter corridor of the palace. "Your species. It is unusual," she said, her voice low. "I expected confrontation or bluster. Instead, you act with patience, yet achieve results that others cannot." Ethan smiled faintly. "That is how humans often succeed, Princess Lyra. We study the situation, adapt, and act when necessary. Sometimes restraint is more powerful than force." Lyra studied him for a long moment. Her violet eyes reflected uncertainty. "You do not fight insults, you do not demand recognition, and yet you command attention. It is unsettling." Ethan inclined his head politely. "Respect is earned through action, not reaction. If one focuses on outcomes instead of emotion, success follows naturally." The princess did not reply immediately. She walked away, leaving Ethan to continue his duties. Yet his words lingered in her mind. For the first time, she considered the possibility that humans, though physically smaller and technologically different, possessed strengths that Lyra Prime had never accounted for. The next challenge arrived without warning. A group of rogue explorers operating independently of the council attempted to access restricted trade routes. Their actions caused minor damage to several transport lines and disrupted communications between districts. Panic spread quickly, and council members argued heatedly over how to respond. Ethan stepped forward calmly. "We need to assess the situation before taking action," he said. "Rushing will create more problems. We can track their movements, predict their next actions, respond strategically." Lyra's advisors hesitated, unsure whether to follow the human's advice. Lyra, however, nodded. "Proceed, human. Show us your method." Over the next several hours, Ethan coordinated with Lyra's security forces and engineers. He predicted the rogue explorers' movements, suggested blockades that minimized collateral damage, and ensured that trade routes could resume safely. His plan succeeded. The rogue group was contained without unnecessary conflict, and the city resumed normal operations. Lyra watched from the observation platform, her mind racing. The human had solved yet another complex problem, again demonstrating intelligence, adaptability, and moral judgment. She had insulted him, expecting weakness or submission. Instead, he had shown competence and composure that challenged everything she believed about humans. That evening, as the sun set over Lyra Prime, Ethan returned to his quarters. He reviewed the events of the day, noting areas where humans and Lyra officials had worked well together and areas for improvement. He knew that challenges would continue, but he also recognized the progress made. Trust had begun to form, respect had begun to emerge, and the foundations for future cooperation were stronger than ever. Lyra approached him quietly, her presence calm but commanding. "You walk among us, human, and yet you carry yourself with confidence we rarely see," she said. "I underestimated your—" Morning arrived with soft light spilling across the palace. Ethan stood on the balcony, feeling the cool breeze and listening to the hum of the energy fields that protected the city. Months had passed since he had first arrived on this alien world, and much had changed. He was no longer an outsider. He was part of the palace, part of the queen's life, and, most importantly, a protector to Lyra. The previous battles had forged respect and trust between him and the queen's people. Guards now looked to him for advice and strategies, while advisors accepted his insight into situations they could not fully understand. His human perspective had proven invaluable, blending courage with reasoning in ways that even the most advanced beings had never anticipated. Lyra ran toward him across the balcony, her small feet tapping against the smooth surface. She carried a small device, one that recorded data and projected holographic shapes for training exercises. "Ethan, look what I learned today," she exclaimed, her eyes bright with excitement. Ethan smiled, crouching to her level. "Show me," he said. Lyra activated the device, which displayed a simulation of a tactical scenario. She had created strategies to protect a simulated city, placing guards, barriers, and energy shields in ways that reflected the lessons Ethan had taught her. "You've done well," he said proudly. "You're thinking like a strategist now. If you continue learning, you might one day lead your people in ways even the queen would admire." Lyra beamed, hugging his arm. "I want to be brave, like you." Ethan ruffled her hair gently. "Being brave isn't just about fighting. It's about protecting others, thinking ahead, and making choices even when it's hard. You've got all of that inside you already." Later, Ethan walked through the palace halls, observing the daily routines and making small adjustments to improve efficiency. He coordinated drills for the guards, advised on training schedules, and helped design protective systems for vulnerable areas. Each step he took strengthened his bond with the people, proving that a single human could contribute meaningfully to an advanced alien civilization. As he entered the central courtyard, Queen Valeria approached him. Her armor shimmered softly in the sunlight, and her presence commanded attention even without the weight of authority. "Ethan," she said, her voice calm but firm, "your contributions have changed the course of our society. You have proven that courage and loyalty are not limited by species. Humanity carries qualities that we can learn from, and you embody them." Ethan bowed respectfully. "I am honored to serve your majesty. I only want to protect Lyra and help your people." Valeria nodded, her eyes reflecting a rare softness. "And you have done more than that. You have inspired confidence, unity, and hope. That is something that cannot be measured by weapons or shields alone." The queen gestured for him to follow. They walked together to a high balcony overlooking the city and the surrounding plains. The twin suns bathed the land in golden light, revealing towers, gardens, and the shimmering energy barriers that protected the palace. "You have earned a place here, Ethan," she said. "Not as a visitor, not as an outsider, but as one of us. Your presence strengthens this world, and your actions have proven that one human can make a difference in ways no one expected." Ethan felt a surge of pride mixed with humility. "I never imagined I would be part of something like this," he admitted. "But I'm grateful for the chance to help." Valeria's gaze softened as she looked toward Lyra, who was playing nearby with other children of the palace. "Your bond with her is more than protection. It is mentorship, guidance, and trust. That is the foundation of all civilizations. You have shown what humanity is capable of, and in doing so, you have changed this world for the better." Ethan watched Lyra laughing with other children, feeling a sense of fulfillment he had never known. He had arrived as a stranger, lost on a distant planet. Yet he had carved a place where courage, selflessness, and intelligence were recognized and respected. Over the next few weeks, Ethan continued his work, but he also found time for quiet moments with Lyra. They explored hidden gardens, studied the stars, and discussed strategies and stories from Earth and her world. She had grown under his guidance, not just in skill, but in confidence, curiosity, and determination. One evening, a council meeting was called. The Queen, her advisors, and Ethan discussed the growing tensions in the surrounding territories. Rival factions had not forgotten the previous battle, and intelligence suggested they were planning another incursion. Ethan's human insight became central to the discussion, as he suggested strategies that combined human ingenuity with alien technology. You see possibilities where others see obstacles, Valeria remarked. That is your greatest strength, Ethan. Humanity's creativity is a weapon in itself, and you wield it wisely. Ethan felt the weight of responsibility, but also a quiet determination. I will continue to help, to protect, and to guide wherever I can, he said. The council adjourned, and the Queen remained beside him as they watched the city lights glow softly against the night sky. You have changed our perception of humans, she said. Your courage, your insight, and your compassion have shown us that humanity is capable of greatness. You are no longer merely a protector of one child, you are a guardian of hope. Ethan absorbed her words. Realizing how far he had come, from an accidental arrival to a respected member of the Queen's court, he had proven that one human could make a difference in an alien world. He thought of Lyra, the guards, the advisors, and all the people who had come to trust him. Each life he had touched reinforced his sense of purpose in the quiet moments that followed. Ethan felt a deep sense of belonging. He had chosen to stay, to embrace the responsibility, and to dedicate himself to this world. It was a life unlike any he had imagined, yet it was a life filled with meaning, courage, and connection. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan became a symbol of human potential in the palace. Guards and citizens alike spoke of his bravery and wisdom. Lyra continued to grow under his guidance, becoming more confident, resourceful, and thoughtful. The Queen relied on him not just for protection, but for counsel, valuing his insight in ways that shaped decisions and inspired loyalty. One afternoon, Ethan and Lyra were walking through a quiet garden when the Queen approached them. Her expression was serene, yet her eyes conveyed respect and admiration. You have done more than protect, she said. You have shown that humanity, even far from home, can stand with honor, courage, and integrity. You have earned your place here, Ethan, not by force, but by action. Ethan nodded humbly. I only did what I thought was right. I wanted to protect Lyra and your people. Valeria smiled faintly. And in doing so, you have changed the course of this world. That is the power of one human, Ethan. Courage, wisdom, and selflessness are forces that cannot be ignored. You have proven that even in a foreign land, humanity's light can shine. As the sun set, Ethan looked toward the horizon. The city below bathed in the warm glow of energy fields. He thought of Earth, of the life he had left behind, and of the purpose he had found here. He understood now that being human was not limited to origin or species, it was defined by action, choice, and the courage to protect and serve. Lyra tugged at his hand, pulling him toward the palace gates. Come on, Ethan. I want to show you something I made in the training hall. He smiled, feeling a profound sense of belonging and fulfillment. Together, they ran through the gardens, their laughter echoing against the walls. The Queen watched from a distance, her expression reflecting pride and quiet satisfaction. Ethan had become part of her world, not by accident, but by courage, choice, and heart. As night fell and stars shimmered above, Ethan stood on the balcony once more, looking out at the world he had come to call home. He had arrived as a stranger, faced impossible challenges, and earned the trust of an entire civilization. He had protected a child, guided a people, and shown that humanity could shine even in the most alien of worlds, and in that moment, Ethan understood something profound. Courage and selflessness are universal. They are not bound by planet or species. A human heart, when guided by purpose and honor, can rise to any challenge. He felt the quiet strength of the palace around him, the warmth of Lyra's trust, and the steady presence of the Queen who had demanded he stay. And he knew, without doubt, that he would continue to protect, guide, and inspire. For he was human, and humanity had a way of standing strong even against the impossible. The palace lights glowed softly in the night. The city hummed with life, and Ethan felt the quiet pride of a life lived with purpose. He had chosen to stay, and in doing so, he had found his place, not just on this world, but in the hearts of those he had protected. As the twin moons rose, casting silver light across the towers and gardens, Ethan closed his eyes briefly, feeling a sense of fulfillment unlike anything he had known. Humanity's courage had proven itself here, and he was living proof that even one person, acting with heart and determination, could change the fate of a world. The night was calm, but Ethan knew that challenges would come again. Yet he was ready, for he had chosen to protect, to serve, and to lead by example. And that choice, more than anything else, defined what it truly meant to be human.